Oh my goodness, this faction is so hard. How are we ever gonna deal with this? Good thing we got Nub to help out. What's up, guys? MtgJedi here, and we have an amazing guest on the channel today. We have Nub to help us out and figure out this crazy faction. I'm super pumped for this conversation. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to diving in. Way back when, it was a few months ago, I guess now at this point, where we were competing against each other in the faction games. Remember, you had High Elves at the time. I had Knights Revenant. So yeah, it's a fun faction. A lot of great champions in here. Lots of cool things you can do. But still, it's a huge challenge, I think, for this faction war, a really nasty one. So yeah, let's see if we can help people out, point them in the right direction, away from the wrong direction, and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to catch you guys up to speed, starting a new series here on the channel. This is the first video to kick it off in 2023, where I'm going to be getting some guests on the channel here to help us figure out what is going on with each faction in 2023. You know, we've added so many champions in 2022 that each of the factions now looks basically completely different than what it has in the past. And so we need some new information. What champions are good? Where do we use them? What are our favorite champions? How do we tackle faction wars? We're going to talk about all these topics and more. And today, Nub chose Knights Revenant, which I'm very excited about because I think he and I both agree this is the hardest faction for faction wars. What do you think, Nub?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. That's the video we're going to do on my channel after this as well. Is breaking down our tier list of which are the most difficult factions in Faction Wars. So we'll have the debate over there. Going into that debate, though, my expectation is that Knights Revenant is probably the hardest one. Like stage 21 in particular is super nasty. You've got the boss that throws debuffs back at you. He swaps HP as well with you. So you got that DPS race. You need lots of damage to take him down without dying yourself. Really tough. And then you also got waves in there with the Valkyries putting up the shields, the counterattack. It's kind of the worst of all worlds when it comes to what you can fight in a faction crypt. It's what you're up against. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for
it's
sure.
nasty.
Yeah, I'm excited to have that conversation with you over on your channel as well. I know we're definitely going to differ in opinions, but either way, Knights Rev has got to be one of the coolest factions. There's so many amazing champions. So let's
Mhm.
start off with just our favorite champions from the factions. Since you are the guest here, why don't you go first? Who's your favorite or a couple favorite champions from the faction?
Oh wow. Okay. That's a tough one. There's so many. I guess I have to give a shout out to her. Void Epic Whisper. She is one of my absolute favorite champions. I think she's such an
Really?
underrated champion as well. Um
I'm shocked to hear you say that. I
really.
know you've done a little bit of work over with her in Hydra, which I thought was really fascinating, but I would never have picked that as my guess for your favorite or one of your favorite champions. What do you like about her?
She just absolutely smashes bosses. She does so much damage. I think the funny thing is when she first came out in the game, it just wasn't that relevant. But as the game has changed, we've got like Hydra, Sand Devil, all this sort of stuff in, like these really tough bosses now. Doom Tower as well. She's actually super good. Like she hits really hard against bosses. She's got that inbuilt chance for extra turn. She brings her own increased attack. It's just great. Like she just absolutely hits like a truck. It's one of the most fun champions to play with, in my opinion.
Wow, that's
Um, it-
awesome.
yeah.
Actually, when she was first added to the game, that was before Relentless Gear was nerfed. So she was actually OP originally, and then when they nerfed the Relentless Gear, everybody kind of just wrote her off. It's great to
Hmm.
see you bringing her back. Um,
But it was actually Mad Capper got me onto it. I saw like
really?
he had a tweet on Twitter, and then I watched his video on it, and I was like, oh my god, he has like a whole series which is I built them so you don't have to, where he takes
Right,
these
right,
like
right.
champions nobody uses and tries them out. And
Yeah.
Whisper was one that he tried that was like, wait, hang on a second. So I jumped on the bandwagon as well. But yeah, she's great.
Well, in terms of epics, I guess my one of my very first favorite champions in the game was Miscreated Monster. But everybody knows how good he is, so I think I'm gonna pick out Sepulchre Sentinel here. I
Hmm.
got her on my free-to-play account, and it's the first time I have ever personally played with her. For whatever reason, on accounts that I've played on, I either never pulled her or I pulled her too late for it to be relevant. And man, what a champion.
Mm.
Still outstanding. I think, obviously she has increased defense and block debuffs, and that's like all you can ever want for your clan boss team. And then that decreased attack A1 is so clutch, but getting to play with her like firsthand, you can definitely feel how good she is. You ever messed
Yeah.
around with her?
Yeah, I used her for a good bit myself as well. Like she can hit pretty darn hard. When you stack her defense up high enough, she gives herself the increased defense. Like that A1 can do a lot of damage, especially against bosses, like you said, clown boss,
Yeah.
Doom Tower bosses. Yeah, she's a really fun champ.
Yeah. Cool.
Do you know when you said miscreated monster? I've been playing now for I guess about 2.5 years. I
Uh-huh.
still do not have a miscreated monster.
Oh, wow. Yeah, on
Yeah.
my I've played multiple accounts at this point, but on my
Mm,
very first, my original account, he was one of my first epics, and I used him in literally every area of the game. He was in my arena team, he was in all my
mhm.
dungeon teams, like he was in my clan boss team, super hard carry. What just
Yeah,
crazy amazing champion.
yeah, he's so
Any
good.
other champs you want to call out that you really like in this faction? Legendaries or rares?
Oh, the legendaries, there's so many that are
Yeah.
so good. Oh, wow, to pick a favorite is tough. I do have a really soft spot, I have to say, for Mother Cybele. Um,
Okay.
again, again, in a similar position to Whisper, she came out and everyone said she sucked.
True.
And I think she was really underrated. And then actually turns out she's a really solid champion for what
Mhm.
she does. I think particularly in Hydra, she comes in really, really clutch, where she's got a great speed aura, one of the best ones. She has amazing base stats. AoE A1, that gives her turn meter, places decreased speed, 50% chance. She brings you increased defense and revive on death. Yeah, she's just a really great champ for Hydra. You can put her in like a provoke set, for example, works really well.
Oh,
And
true.
she's going to be churning out the AoE hits, keeping stuff provoked, procking War Master AoE. The decreased speed is so good. The speed aura. Yeah, so I really like her. And she looks awesome as well. I love the red
Yeah,
skin.
yeah, like the Red Queen kind of look.
Yeah, it's a dramatic statement.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like her. I like her a lot. She's one of my faves.
That's a great call out. I mean, I've definitely used her in some Hydra takeovers as well. I recently just got Shemnath, and so that's the
Mm.
champion I'm really looking forward to playing with from this faction. But before we move on topics, I cannot move on without giving you my favorite rare in the game.
Oh.
My favorite rare in the game is in this faction, and that is my dude Guardian. And I'm sure we're going to get back to him in this video, so I don't
Hmm.
want to spend too much time here. But this is maybe the most underrated rare in the game, and he's been my favorite rare for a very long time. Such an incredible champion. Have you ever used him?
Yeah, I did use him actually. I think I used him in some Hydra stuff too, is trying him out. He's not bad actually, even for that.
Yeah,
But yeah, like compared to your typical rare, he's so far he's so far beyond that.
yeah.
Really cool. Like decreasing all enemy buffs by 2 turns. Good chance on his A1, and he has
Mm-hmm.
counterattack built into his kit as well. Like 2 turns, pretty much all the enemies you're going to be fighting have 2 turn buffs. That's it.
Right, right.
So it's effectively just strip all the buffs off
It
that
is.
enemy. So yeah, well, I'm sure we will come back to it when we're talking about beating Valkyrie waves and stuff like that.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
really
for
cool
sure.
option. Yeah.
Okay, so next topic is going to be just champions that are unusable from this faction. So do you think any of
Hmm.
the legendaries in this faction are unusable?
In general, or specifically for faction wars?
Uh I was thinking for faction wars, but yeah, in
Yeah.
general if you want as well, either way.
Sure. Okay, so I think for faction wars, I think one thing that makes this faction pretty difficult actually is that the one legendary that you can definitely get will take a little while, but Thea the Tomb Angel, you get her from Doom Tower Heart. She's the first champion from Secret Rooms. And unfortunately for stage 21 of Faction War, she's just not very good.
Yeah.
The problem is her affinity.
Yeah.
We've mentioned Valkyrie waves several times. They
Yeah.
are spirit affinity enemies. And Thea is not good against the boss, really. She's there to clear the waves, and she just can't do it. She'll weak hit. She'll fail to place the Hex. Her big nuke can weak hit and not do any damage. She'll just keep dying because she can get crit a lot by those Valkyries because of the bad affinity. So I don't
100%
want to say
agree.
she's not entirely unusable, but if you compare it to a faction
Close,
like Barbarians getting Silver Drakes,
right.
oh, sorted, you get Thea, and it's like probably actually she's not going to help you at all to beat
Right.
this faction.
Right.
So,
Excellent point there. I would 100% agree.
mm.
I think that I want to mention Gaius here.
Oh
And
yeah.
the reason I want to mention Gaius is because he's so difficult to use. Obviously, we know he's an incredible champion, but when it comes to level 21 in this faction, I've just died so many times to my own bombs
Yeah.
that I never encourage people to use him for their Faction War 21 clear. You have to be so careful with the timing, and then sometimes it just ends up coming back to bite you as well. Have you had that same experience with him?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, the funny thing is you can even turn off his A2 for the boss, but the passive still puts bombs, so they're
Yeah,
still going to have bombs go out there.
yeah. And
I've
then
had it work. Yeah.
it's only 30%, so like you don't even know when it's going to happen. You can't play around it, you can't predict it. It's unpredictable.
Yeah, exactly. I've used them and had it work, but that's because I've got champions in there that have tons of resistance built on them, so they're not going to die like a Rector Drath. But like for anyone progressing through Faction Wars, you're not going to have those stats. You're just going to die to the bombs, and it's going to be very frustrating. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, for
good
sure.
call.
Yeah. As far as the other Legos, I think all of them are fine, but I
Hmm.
don't necessarily recommend Whirlum or anyone who's going to put up a lot of buffs. Because
Mhm.
again, that's just unusable on the Valkyrie wave. So, like, why would you be using Whirlum? What is he bringing to your team if you can't bring those buffs? I mean, he
Mhm.
does, he's survivable. He can hit a little bit, but oftentimes you don't have room for him in your team. So I would be cautious about Whirlum, but he's not as bad as the other two. Any
Yeah.
other legendaries, or you want to move on to epics that you think are avoidable or should be avoided?
I mean, I think Norma's probably fairly poor for the boss. I have used her, so she's
Yeah,
not unusable, but she's relatively weak. The reason that she can be kind of good is that she does bring a decent heal on her A2. One of the big problems with Norma, just in general, and I used her, I think, in the Knights Revenant faction games, and she was great for that. But
yeah,
she needs so many books, so many books. Like it's an absurd investment. I used her unbooked, and just the first time I beat this faction, and just about got away with it, but it was sketchy. But a similar thing, she throws out a bunch of poisons, and they just get thrown back in your face by the boss, which isn't good,
right,
and she
right.
doesn't really help with the waves. But she can be okay to step in as a healer, but it's kind of like you got in that case you pull the worst possible of the usable legendaries.
Right.
Almost anyone else would be so much better.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely agree there. And if I counted right, it's either 16 or 17 books, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right,
Who
well,
has that
moving
many?
on to epics, I think that, man, like half of the epics are unusable. I would just not
Hmm.
even recommend, like, I would say, I would go so far as to say, we shouldn't even talk about the ones that are unusable. We just need to
Yeah.
focus on the ones that are usable. Because there's just so many that just do nothing for this faction. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So why don't we just go ahead and transition over into the best champions for this faction? And then we'll
Absolutely.
just continue talking about legendaries and then move down to the epics. Does that sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So for me, the main thing that you really are looking for in faction wars and in tons of areas in the game, obviously, is control. And if you can control the waves, especially the Valkyries, then that makes your life so much easier. So I think that probably the number one best champion for this faction is got to be Solus.
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
because he has the provokes on multiple abilities and then the stun on his A1. If you have him, it just breeze through 21 as long as you have anyone else to go with him. Have you found that to be true as well?
Yeah, I actually don't have a Solus, but I mean, yeah, exactly what you said. Not only does he actually hits extremely hard, he's extremely tanky as well, but he brings you so much control too. So yeah, I mean, he's got to be like in terms of standalone. I will disagree in terms of the best for the faction, but
Okay.
I think the best for the faction is going like it's really not relevant for progression. Like ultra late game, I think there's better, but I think as a standalone, if you had one legendary for this faction, I would, yeah, say Solus is probably the one to have to take it down for the reasons that you said. Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
great. Well, who
Mm.
would you like to mention then from the legendaries in terms of, really helping you out in this faction?
Well, I think I could talk about the. Will I talk about the most broken combo, or will I talk about another standalone
Yeah, your
legendary?
choice. Yeah, you could do both if
Okay.
you'd like.
Let's talk about a couple of standalone legendaries that can make a big difference. I actually think Arix could be really strong for this one. I'm looking forward to building my own Arix, maybe next CVC actually, personal
Okay.
rewards. Um, she is a login champion, but you get her
I
so
know,
far into
right?
the logins, not really super useful by then. But if you pulled her early, I actually think that this champion would be amazing. So she's magic affinity, which is perfect for this, right? Perfect. She comes in, she has an AoE stun that can also throw back debuffs onto enemies that are stunned. So mostly the AoE stun in her A2 is really good. She brings in ally protection, counter attack on herself as well in her A3. She has an AoE A1, so you could put her in something like a stun set or a provoke
Yeah.
set
Yeah.
and absolutely lock out those waves. And she's going to help your team stay alive against the boss as well with the ally protection. And I say she's probably going to do pretty good damage. So I think similar to Solus, probably not as good, but still similar. She's going to, yeah, basically bring control, damage, and survivability too to the team, which is the trifecta really of what you need.
Yeah, I always said about Eric's, if you got her earlier, she would be super helpful, but
Mm,
you're getting her so late. But there are going to be plenty of people who have her that have opened her from a shard. And it's champions
mm,
like this that, man, I would just love to get early on an account. Like, she seems like an amazing champion, just not for when you get her automatically. If you can get her before that, I think she can be crazy helpful. So
yes.
awesome, yeah, awesome call out there. And
Mhm.
what was your crazy combo you wanted to mention?
Well, the crazy combo is you bring multiple Theodore and multiple Calvalax together. So
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward, but like the Calvalax comes in with his passive. You bring probably two of those to stack up 8 poisons that start every turn.
Hmm.
And then you bring in like 3 Theodores to explode the poisons. And I think that's the fastest possible team you could have for this faction. Just yeah, it's pretty dirty.
It really
And
is. It really is.
it's so useless for anyone trying to progress because to make it work, you really need 2 Calvalax and
Yeah.
probably at least 3 Theodores. So
Yeah.
good luck. I've got no Theodores, right? Um,
I found Georgian to be pretty ridiculous as well. He can just pop
yeah,
the waves with his ignore defense ability. But I think it's
definitely.
going to be a lot more relatable for people to mention some epics. So let's move on there. Who would you say is the most important epic for beating this faction?
Ooh, tough one. I'd say probably Rector Drath might be
Gotta
the
be.
one that makes it easiest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
You can definitely beat this without her, and I've done that plenty of accounts. But if you
mm.
have her, that revive is just so clutch. And the
Yeah.
heal, right?
Yeah, she does a lot of healing. She brings the revive. If she is the only epic, yeah, she's still the only epic reviver in the faction. There's even very few. Are there even any revivers in the legendaries at quick glance? Not
No, I
really.
mean the
Mother,
only one would really be Mother Sibel
mother.
with her revive on death.
Yeah.
There's not an actual reviver other than
Hmm.
Rector in the faction. When
Yeah.
you build her for Faction Wars, though, do you like putting accuracy on her for her A1, or do you skip that for Faction Wars?
I'd probably skip it. Like, I don't think there's that many hits that are coming in that are that strong.
No.
It's not terrible to have if you can get some accuracy on her for the boss, it's okay. But I'd be
Yeah.
prioritizing, making sure that she stays alive, that she's nice and quick to get the
Mhm.
heals and the revives out. I prioritize those things first, I would say.
Yeah, that's definitely, and I love putting resistance on her as well, because then
Yeah.
you're not getting any of those debuffs thrown back at you.
Hmm.
I think it's probably a good time to mention, when you're trying to build a tanky champion, good stat numbers to hit is like, 200 speed, 50,000 HP as like good minimums for someone like a Rector that you need to survive the whole fight too.
Hmm.
And for my end, I think that Sinacia is one of the most important champions. If you have her, she's like auto include on your faction war team, in my opinion, especially when you're clearing it originally. Because with
Yep.
the A1, again, same thing like you said with Mother Sibel, you can put that stun set on her so that you're having more crowd control for those Valkyrie waves, and then her A2 automatically puts one person's skills on cooldown. So you can lock down somebody. I've even used two Sinacias in people's teams before. And then the
Hmm.
A3 equalizing the HP. If you have any other healing and then this equalize, it is a gigantic healing. Gigantic healing. Have you had good experience with her in this faction also?
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't pull her until it was too late. But yeah,
Okay.
she 100% stands out. Like exactly as you said, it's the trifecta again, right? She actually does surprisingly good damage. She brings lots of control, especially in a set, and she brings survivability with all that the HP balancing, and locking them out of their skills. Nice aura as well, the 31% HP for the faction
Yes.
crit. So
Yeah, super good
yeah.
aura. Totally agree there.
Hmm. And
Well,
she's a good combo with her sister if we want to jump into her
yeah,
next.
sure.
Yeah, but Skull Crown Void Epic, she is harder to get, but she comes in and she really brings the damage. And another very good option again for that control set, like a stun set in particular, would be good for her. She's got a similar A1 AoE. She's got an AoE A2 as well. And then she has some survivability with her passives, including a self revive when Tenacious on the same team, gives you some safety. Plus, Skullcrown, much like Rector and I would say Sinacia as well, are just generally good champions
Right.
that you can absolutely run elsewhere. Like you can absolutely run them and they'd be amazing in Arena. Like at that point of the game, they're absolutely amazing. They're great for Hydra as well. They're great for Doom Tower. Um, these are champions that you get to level 60 and you're like, that was a great investment. I don't
Yeah.
regret that at all. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's always good when your faction war champions can transition to other areas of the game also and help you out multiple places.
Mm.
If you're gonna run Skull Crown, highly recommend a stun set or putting her in lifesteal actually,
Ah,
because
yeah.
with her being an attack-based champion, she definitely needs some additional survivability. You don't want to have to rely on that passive re-triggering, because if you have her booked, it's still on a 4-turn cooldown.
Yeah.
Um, and then I think like the other champion that really stands out to me as like a top tier champion for faction wars is going to be Faceless, because a lot of
Mm.
times what you're lacking in this faction is damage to get through the waves.
Hmm.
Skull Crown is great. She really is. But a lot of people, for whatever reason, just have a Faceless sitting around on their account, and you don't need him in a lot of areas of the game, but in this faction in particular, man, he just really steps up and can basically take out the all of the waves on his own, and then just use the rest of your team for control and healing. So I would definitely say Faceless is very important if you have him. Otherwise, you're going to have to find somebody else to like bring the damage for you in this faction.
Yeah. Yeah, I put Whisper in a similar vein of basically the big single target nukers that can
Hmm.
destroy a given Valkyrie.
Yeah.
Faceless will be better for that, to be fair, definitely.
Yeah.
But then Whisper will help you, I think, more than Faceless will in terms of beating the boss, which is another challenge, right? You've got the boss is the one that swaps health with you with one of
Yeah.
your champs. You got 12 turns to beat him, or he just does it again,
Right.
and that can be tricky
It
if
is.
you need to bring in like lots of control and stuff like that for the
Hmm.
waves or miscreated monster we didn't mention yet. Similarly, but
Hmm.
yeah, basically Faceless or Whisper can give you that big single target damage to actually get the boss dead
Oh, that's
instead
a
of being
great
sat
call
there
out.
just
I
scrolling.
never value her, and I definitely need that's maybe my biggest takeaway from this video is Whisper
Mm.
is super underrated and needs to be used more.
Mm.
Another thing that's really helpful on the boss is if you can put somebody in the destroy set, then
Mm.
you actually destroy the boss's max HP and they don't swap as much health.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. So then let's wrap it up and talk about some practical teams that we can put together. Actually, real quick before we do that, let's hop in and talk about Guardian at that rare spot,
Yeah.
real quick. Because, again, he's just so clutch at helping you with the Valkyrie waves. If the Valkyrie waves put up their defense, counterattack, ridiculous ability, then what happens is he has a counterattack up and will counterattack on each of them and then remove all of those buffs. And then you can also put block buffs on some people as well. And additionally, since he's an HP based champ, you can put him in a shield set or some type of defensive set to help protect your team. But I've actually used him in Toxic as well for additional damage on the boss.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, he's such a good option. Like, and because he's a rare, he's so easy to get. Like, you will get him eventually.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself you're on stage 21, you're like, man, I've got great epics. A lot of the epics you guys are calling out, but man, those Valkyries they just mess me up. I can't even get to the boss consistently. It's like you can throw Guardian in,
Hmm.
uh, and yeah, especially with the AI, you can set him up to just save that counter attack to put on right the start of wave two,
Yep.
and it makes it a lot more consistent for sure
Absolutely.
very low investment as well. So,
Yeah, but unfortunately, he would be the only rare that I would recommend using. Even someone like Renegade to reset is just
mm,
not needed, and Coffin Smasher, who you might have, for your clan boss, like those type of champions, in my opinion, they're just not good enough to clear this faction because of the difficulty level. So
mm.
let's go ahead and move on to maybe accessible teams for people to work on to be able to beat this faction. So, do you have an idea of an accessible team that you think would be good for somebody to clear this faction?
Ooh, that's tough. Let's. I mean, if we just throw together any epics, I guess we could pick all the best ones, and you could have Erector Drathin for the
Okay.
healing revive. Maybe Miscreated Monster in for the consistent stun, some ally
Mm-hmm.
protection as well, and some
Mm-hmm.
fears there. Throw in the Tenacious Skull Crown combo
Okay.
for, again, AoE and more healing and damage, and then maybe throw in like a Faceless or a Whisper to help kill the boss. I
And
think that
that's a
seems
team that
all
I've
right.
built on so many people's accounts. So you're
Hmm.
definitely right there. Is there like what if we don't have a rector? What do you think
Mm.
we can do if we don't have a rector to sort of fill in and make this more survivable? You any thoughts on
Mm.
that?
Yeah, that's tough. I'd be interested in what you think. I'd say you could throw in the Doom Priest even could work. We didn't mention her yet, but she's
Yeah,
got the passive healing.
Doom
Could be
Priest
all
is
right.
great. The only problem is you definitely don't want to use her increase attack basically at all during the fight. And then
Mm.
she's not going to do any damage for you. So
No.
I oftentimes finding myself removing her from the team, but sometimes you just need that healing to be able to survive. One of the
Yeah.
things that I think can be helpful in this faction is putting some people in sets that are going to give you health back, regen,
Yeah.
lifesteal, guardian, bolster. Any of those sets, especially if you don't have rector, can be very, very helpful. But unfortunately, I mean, between Rector and Doom Priest, that's basically the only accessible healers. Am I missing anybody there?
Yeah, like I mean, like we said, Sinacia does a bit, but you're gonna get worn down
Yeah,
with her.
yeah,
I think it is one of the toughest things is that if you don't have Rector, you're going into what can definitely be what's it, a war of attrition against Valkyrie waves and
right.
against a long boss fight. You're going into that without that much healing and no revive, and that's where it does really get so punishing.
It does.
Um,
Yeah.
Yes, that is really difficult. I think, yeah, like you said, a combination of sets, bringing in like an off healer like the Sinacia or the Doom Priest, someone who's going to do a little bit to keep you topped up,
hmm
and then making sure, yeah, you're so reliant on the sets and stuff. Then, but yeah, it gets very difficult very
It
quickly.
does. Yeah. Well, the nice thing is a lot of the legendaries, if you have them, are going to be great. We already talked about
Mm,
Eric's and Shemnath both being good. Bistafis is great for this level. You just have to not weak hit, so you might have to run that a bit. But
yeah.
Versulf is great as well. Tomb Lord is
Mm.
great. I mean, Drang, most of these legendaries are usable in this faction. Um, but do be careful that you're thinking about the team composition when you're going to beat this faction.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the legendaries are extremely strong. We talked about some of the bad ones, but really most of the others are very, very helpful. But the biggest barrier, number one, you got this the smaller barrier of trying to plan the team when you get them, but the bigger barrier is actually getting one of them um, early enough in the game.
Yeah,
So that can be tricky.
yeah,
Um, I tend to feel like this will be one of the last factions people are going to be able to beat because you do need to pull those key epics or some of the legendaries
yeah,
to have a chance at stage 21.
yeah, for sure. But it's very beatable with only epics as
Yep.
long as you're getting some of those high profile ones that we've been mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing that I want to mention here is kind of just like what my faction war team is right now, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe you can mention yours as well. I run Mother Cybele in my faction war team, and actually it is all legendaries at this point. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously not necessary to beat the faction. But I run Mother Cybele, Georgid, Tomb Lord, Theodore, and Solus is my Knights Rev team. So
Oh.
one of the more powerful teams I have on my account for sure.
I'd say that's blisteringly fast.
It's pretty fast. I don't remember the time offhand, and obviously Knights Rev is not open today for me to check the time, but I think it's
Yeah.
about a minute or so.
Oh wow.
It's a pretty fast team. But
Nice.
so who do you use on your faction war team?
Yeah, I was just checking. There's a my faction war team is double Calvalax, Tomb Lord, Rector Drath, and a Renegade. Um, so it's not as fast. It's definitely not as quick, but it's still good. Like you blow up the waves really quickly with the Tomb Lord double Calvalax. You reset wave 2 with Renegade. And then the boss takes a little bit more time. You have to have the abilities come back.
Yeah,
Because Tomb Lord can deplete turn meter. Once the boss gets low, he's just gonna die.
right.
And yeah, Rector just makes sure that no, I could probably replace her with someone to do more damage, but it just makes it consistent.
Right. She just adds that 100% win rate for you, so you don't have to worry
Yeah,
about it, right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
one thing I do want to mention is if you have any of these top end damage dealers, you can sometimes sneak in a kill before the boss resets. If you
Yep.
time it right and you have enough damage, or you have somebody to like decrease the turn meter, like Tomb Lord as an example there.
Yeah, I think Tomb Lord might be the. I could be wrong. I feel like he's the only one with turn meter deplete in the faction,
Right, yeah, I think that's true for this
which
faction. Yeah, yeah, for
which is
sure.
rough, like as well.
Yeah.
That's another thing makes it harder.
Yeah, definitely. All right,
Hmm.
well, any other thoughts on this faction before we wrap it up?
No, I think we've covered basically everything that needs to be covered here. I guess, just wish everyone good luck with this
Yeah,
one. Like I said, it's one of the most difficult factions. When you take this one down, you're not going to find many of the others to be as hard. So you once you beat it, congratulations, you've done one of the toughest faction wars. So,
yeah, for sure, for sure. And if you need help, just get a hold of either of us. You can post your faction war teams below or send me a screenshot of your roster in Discord. Always happy to help. We do faction war takeovers all the time on stream. So if you need help on this, please ask. You know, the raid community is so great. There's always people willing to help you figure out what the best team is for your roster. And thank you so much, Nub, for coming on the channel today. It's been great chatting with you. I feel like I've definitely found some hidden gems in this faction. Hopefully the viewers have as well. Any last words before we're out the door here?
No, just thank you so much for having me on for the first episode of this new series. Good luck with it. I think it's a really great idea for a series. I'm looking forward to seeing the other episodes. And of course, the self promotion here to like hop on over to my channel as well,
Please.
guys, because MtgJedi, he's coming over and we're doing a collab there too, where we're going to rank all of the different factions in terms of which ones we think are the easiest, which ones we think are the hardest. So hopefully that will be an interesting debate and give you like a good overview of where to place the different parts of the series that he's doing here on his channel too. So there we go.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for being here, man. It's been a blast. And definitely, guys, if you don't know Nubs yet, like, go over to his channel, subscribe. He's one of the content creators that I personally watch every day. I love his content. He's always doing great stuff. So make sure you head over there, and we will see you guys in the next video.